Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody for our budget work session this evening. Let's please stand for salute to the flag. Roll call, Mr. Belmont and Mr. Murray are not in attendance this evening. And I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Lynch to present the budget priorities.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Danino. It's good to see a very packed crowd tonight. It's standing room only for those of you who can't see at home. It's incredible. Normally we would just handle the budget over to Mr. Press, who would handle the line-by-line analysis of the budget for the board. But this is a different budget. I have to say, I have been in the district for 15 years. I've been preparing budgets as business official for 10 of those years. Now this will be my second one as a superintendent. And by far, this was the most difficult budget that we have ever put together. And so you are going to hear from other districts shortly, if you have not already. There are school closings going on. There are people being laid off. So there's a lot of stuff going on out there. So what I wanted to do was try to kind of present an overall view of the budget and how we got where we are, and then hand over to Mr. Press for the details. So really, this presentation begins back in September. So in September, we had a special budget work session that early because we knew that revenue and expenses were going to outpace revenue. And at that meeting, we started to talk about what should be, when things get tough, and this is tough, what are the things that we should be keeping most in mind? So last year, we went through the entire profile of the OWL process. And this year was what I consider year one of the process. So we listened to the community last year. That was year zero. This year, we really and I have to say, a lot of the work, we just had our extended PD session yesterday, work led by teachers looking at the profile of the OWL and seeing how that can be built into the curriculum. So really, I think before we begin this budget, we need to know what are our priorities. So this is not stuff that I made up. This is not stuff that the board made up. This is coming directly from the community through a series of 700 responses on our survey, over 200 people in listening sessions. This is where we got this stuff from. So the number one priority that this community asked of us is that social emotional learning and character building should be just as important, if not more important, than academic learning. That came at a 90% finding. So that is a really screaming finding. And then right attached to it, that mental health support is essential. And then we looked at some of the mindsets and traits that we want the kids to have: self-awareness, self-esteem, emotional regulation, open-mindedness, adaptability, resiliency, and strong work ethic. So that kind of becomes what we would refer to as the soft skills. And I know I've seen in the elementary newsletters, when the principals send them out, their monthly themes are tied to some of that. We've been talking about this in the middle schools and in the high school. So this is pervasive around our culture now, but we're trying to get more and more into it. But so this becomes the North Star of this budget. We would do everything that we could do to preserve these priorities. Then the academic priorities, critical thinking and problem solving, are most important and most valued. And that's kind of what we were talking about with our faculty as to how we build that into the curriculum. Interpersonal and communication skills, especially writing. So I did sit in at this entire year at the English department. I became a member of that department for the year, and I was happy to sit with them yesterday, and I told them something that I'll just tell all of you right now. We are probably a year ahead of where I thought we would be on this goal, because people bought into the philosophy, and it's not just happening at the secondary level, it's also happening at the elementary level, where the writing revolution is beginning to revolutionize the structure. I saw a kindergarten class where only an English teacher could get excited about this. I saw subjects and predicates from 5-year-olds. And that's really awesome. So that we're well on our way to that goal. And then the other one that we've heard loud and clear, I've said this to the community, the one that we scored least well on is that we weren't doing such a good job with what were called real-life skills: financial literacy, digital literacy, career and vocational preparedness. So these become what we invest in, because all the money, all a budget is a financial statement of what your priorities are. So you should hear these themes come out in Worcester. They're going to come out, right? Like these things, I hope so. So those become the important things of the budget priorities. However, at the same time, we get presented this year with literally unprecedented fiscal challenges. It's why we had to have that budget work session back in September. Those of you who've been fans of this meeting for the last 3 years were not surprised, because we've been saying state aid's going to drop off, expenses are growing, there's a fiscal cliff coming, and it's probably going to come somewhere around 2025. I wish we were wrong. We weren't wrong. So we had large expenditure growths, specifically in the area of transportation, special education, and pupil personnel. By pupil personnel, I mean psychologists, social workers, and counselors. And then another thing that we did not even have here, if you remember, we had contracted security all those years. We also took on a fully homegrown security force. So all of that puts pressure on the budget, which really we balanced for the last couple of years on state aid. The state aid disappears, and so we needed to last year make up for that, and we did it through the use of our reserves. Again, I've said it to this board and to the 30 boards before you. You will hear people criticize districts for having healthy reserves. Don't let anyone convince you that that's the right way to do. I'm sorry, state controller, that's not good fiscal monitoring. You and the community have let us build these reserves so that when we needed them, we didn't have to lay off people last year. We were able to continue the program. But as Mr. Press is going to show you, we spiked our use of reserves, and that's just not good for long-term fiscal health. Concern for not overburdening the taxpayer. That's a polite way of saying we know no one really wants us to pierce the cap. That was a sincere concern this year, that we may have to come to you tonight and say, we want you to consider piercing the cap. But tonight we're not going to be asking you for that. The reason why we have that problem was because back in 23-24, the state gave us a ton of aid. And we had the ability to go as a tax cap, our maximum allowable levy, 4.74%. Because we didn't need it, and the trust that the community has in us, we chose to leave $1.5 million on the table. That was a decision we made 2 years ago that, quite frankly, comes back to bite us today. Because with the tax cap, once you leave money on the table, you literally never get it back. So we had to consider this year, is this the year that we may ask the public to pierce the cap? We're not asking you that tonight. Put on top of that, state aid concerns. So they had basically given us too much aid for a couple of years because they were trying to right-size money they owed us for the last 10 years. We knew that they were starting to look at the future of foundation aid, and we just knew that we were never going to see the increases that we had been seeing in those years. The Rockefeller Institute issues a report, and we were quite pleasantly surprised this year when we were able to see that they did adopt one major recommendation of the Rockefeller Foundation, and that was to include real poverty data rather than using 25-year-old poverty data. So that was good. What's bad? We saw where our expenses are increasing. There's still no updated special education formula that helps a district like Lynbrook, which is trying to do the right thing by keeping kids home. There is no aid category for all the social emotional investment that we've made in the last couple of years. There is no aid for school security. So all of those things go unaided, and now we're left with the most historic budget deficit that I had ever seen back in January. So we had to do something. We had to do something big, and we had to do something that didn't just save money, but actually structurally change the budget and change this trajectory. So to much fanfare, we introduced Retirement Incentive 2025. In other districts, this would not be such a big deal because they do them every year. You know, when you're looking at documents signed by William Metcalf, that was the last time one was done was 4 superintendents ago, that the last time there was a retirement incentive here was 1995, that this was a big deal. So we went into negotiation with the Lynbrook Teachers Association to see what we could do to encourage some people to retire who may not otherwise be considering it. The great thing about this incentive is it doesn't actually touch the taxpayer. We have a special fund that's put aside only to pay out sick time. That's called the Employee Benefits Accrued Liability Reserve, and we were able to tap that to pay for the incentive. We had, if you ever want to see, I wish we kind of had if you want to see a former English teacher and a current English teacher arguing about semicolons, that's what Mr. Kirschenberg and I kind of did. But what does "is" mean in that context, you know? So we crafted a careful memorandum of agreement to make sure that we had it legally correct. And then with thanks to this board for coming out every single week since the holiday break to take some portion of that agreement up. So, and I'm happy to announce tonight that resulted in $1.8 million of savings for the district and literally closed the gap that we were needing. For those of you watching at home, and I can imagine who some people may be sitting at home, might be people very early in their career right now. There might be some young teachers sitting on their couches who cannot wait for me to hear these words. There will be no layoffs this year. And that is only due because of this retirement incentive. So you can rest a little easy. And because it does 2 things at once. It closes next year's budget gap, but also it takes people off of the rolls so that in the future, we are able to actually reduce the number of teaching staff through the process of attrition. And that creates structural changes to the budgets that has that happening without accessing staff. I do need to do full disclosure here. So now that was just the good news and everyone's all happy. The one thing we have to keep our eye on is, I think it's probably why you see many people dressed in red tonight, we depend on $1.2 million of federal funding. So right now we are anticipating that we will be receiving all that federal funding. If you hear any changes out of Washington regarding the IDEA grant, the Individual with Disabilities Education Act grant, we fund salaries out of that grant. If that is disrupted in any way, either by not appearing or if it is delayed because of New York State's noncompliance with federal law, or if there is something where they move it to another department and there's going to be changes in the way the paperwork is done, all of that's bad news for us. I have to say, I've been reading some of this. I haven't seen any of that yet, but I just want full disclosure tonight that we kind of have to put that out there. But otherwise, the good news is the good news. Why can we actually see, so let's go back to this one, the structural changes to future budgets. So what those of you who were here in September heard is that we added 25 to 26 staff members in the last 4 years alone. So we ballooned staff with a purpose, because of mostly to do with the social emotional learning, mostly to do with hiring PPS staff, all with good reason. But at the same time, we need to look at structural changes to our schools in light of this. So we just got our projections. Every year we do a demographic study, and what it does, it kind of takes a snapshot. So here is the snapshot of the enrollment of the district starting in 2013. And you can see that we are on kind of a steady decline in enrollment. So you can see 2013, the year I became assistant superintendent, we were over 2,800 kids. Right now, in 2024, we're somewhere around the mid 2,700s. And then as you're going to watch the line, we kind of level out for the next couple of years. And then we anticipate a large decrease in overall enrollment. So what I want to introduce tonight is a concept of how we're balancing this budget. and how we're balancing future budgets. It's going to be through a process of what I call thought-filled rehiring. So what normally happens in this district and in most districts is a fourth grade teacher resigns, we hire a fourth grade teacher. And it's almost an automatic reaction. Somebody leaves, somebody comes. Somebody leaves, somebody comes. What I'm asking all the administrators to do at this point is to really look at our needs and our future needs and say, okay, if this resource has left us, if this person has decided to retire, are we able to create efficiency with the people who are here already to create a long-term savings? And why is that important? A, it's the right thing educationally, but B, it saves future jobs, because I don't want to be back here again next year or the year after that. So we want to take very careful. Oh, yes, we have students walking through the back. That's okay. It's class night. That's much more important than what I'm talking about. So that's where we want to get to, and I have to give credit to our. Again, I don't know. With a lot of the administrators are sitting in the back of the room. I don't know why this penchant for Friday afternoon meetings has hit me, but they seem to always be in these Friday afternoon meetings where we're talking about this type of stuff, and it's going to be work that's hard. It's good, but it is doable. I think we have some preliminary plans. Mr. Press is going to be presenting an unbalanced budget tonight because we still have some more thinking to do. And I think hopefully if we get all that together, we may be able to present a fully balanced budget as early as next week. So that concept is thoughtful rehiring. So that's kind of where this budget comes from. And I just want to give, a couple of big thank yous. So I thank this board for being so very careful about, doing your jobs. We asked you to come out, and you came out again and again and again. You met. You asked tremendously good questions. The last thing, folks, you want from your board is to just let us do what let's do this. No, they asked very thoughtful questions. They made sure that we had the plan set. They had concern for their teachers. They had concerns for their students, and they did their jobs. I want to thank Mr. Kirschenberg and the Lynbrook Teachers Association. Regardless of all the arguing about semicolons, we got it done. And I think that was important, that I think that cooperation that we have with our collective bargaining, we always say, we don't see eye to eye every day, but when it really hit the road and it was about, let's see if we can save some jobs, I think we got it right. And then the final people I want to thank, and I hope I don't get too emotional here, but I had some incredible, wonderful conversations with retirees. And most of those, you don't know their names yet, because last month we did kind of the people who were on the block to retire. So the last couple of weeks have been me sitting down with people who were almost ready to retire, who, if, you've got another year or two left in you and you really kind of want to do it, and they just weren't kind of psychologically in the place where they were ready to go. And these people came, letters in hand, and to a person handed the letter over and said, I hope I'm saving a job. And if that is not the owl spirit of the people who are once an owl, always an owl, and whose names we will be announcing next week, I don't know what is. So that's the biggest thank you I have to those people, and I can't say their names yet, but you will hear their names next week. And quite frankly, Lynbrook, you will be sad that you are losing some really wonderful educators. And I think, and I got to hear some great stories. I got to hear that I didn't realize that that's the Burns Siderman Gallery. He was an inveterate smoker, and apparently my office used to be filled with so much smoke you had to almost cut the air with it. I mean, these are people who were telling me stories from old Lynbrook that were just when they came in and Dr. Byra was sitting there, and there's nothing I love more than spending, Terry, half an hour, 45 minutes with each of these people and then letting them tell me the story of their career. And then I always end by saying, on behalf of this district and the children you served, I thank you. And it ended in tears a lot, and there's just no words to talk about those owls that we're going to be sending off next week. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Press, who's going to do the line by line.
Thank you, Dr. Lynch. Can you all hear me out there? Should I, no, move the mic closer? Is that better? Ah, much better, I can tell. Thank everyone for coming out. Great presentation is up there. You know, I want to really mirror a lot of what Dr. Lynch had said in thanking all of the folks involved in this process. I think Dr. Lynch won't bring himself to really thank himself. That'd be a little odd, but I do want to thank him. When I came to him originally and I said, we have a problem, after we all freaked out a little bit and panicked, he jumped right into action. Your central office team here, I'm not including myself, but the two folks to my right, really just jumped in as well, dug real deep into not only the budget, but the entire educational program. I'm not sure if Dr. Balek has slept much in the last month or so. They put in a lot of time on this budget. And as someone who's not here very long, I'm very fortunate that they have been here very long because they know this district like the back of their hand. And I also want to thank the administrators in here, our budget administrators, who spent a lot of time developing their initial budget only to have us say, yeah, go back and trim a little bit more. And they did that willingly and without complaints, at least in front of me. And it's, you know, on their behalf, as well as I do also want to thank the LTA for that retirement incentive because that brought us a long way toward our goal. As Dr. Lynch said, we do not have a balanced budget yet, but we are so much closer than I thought we would get at this point based on where we started a couple of months back. So, having said that, we'll just jump in. In terms of the programmatic priorities, Dr. Lynch talked about profile of the OWL a lot, but what's on this slide are the things that we focused on when developing the budget. So included in the budget here is a continuation of building out the continuum of special ed at West End, North, and the high school. We continue to leverage our partnership with Northwell Health for social work and mental health support. We're integrating ruler program into the classrooms. We are continuing to integrate science of reading and the writing revolution in the intermediate elementary grades. And we are introducing next year, and I guess we started a little bit this year, the micro-credentialing opportunities at the high school. And I know Dr. Balekis spoke about that in a previous Board of Ed meeting. So here's the gap that Dr. Lynch mentioned. We're close. The original gap when we started had a couple of more zeros on there. So we're close. And this is why I believe we will be able to present next week a budget that is balanced. We just need to take a look at the responses from the retirement incentive and see how that works with the educational program. How we're going to bridge that gap, we have several options that we sort of threw out on the table. Dr. Lynch mentioned some of these: piercing the tax cap, accessing positions, otherwise reducing expenses, using additional reserves and fund balance, and you know, looking at potentially additional aid, state aid from the adopted New York State budget. So we pretty much immediately ruled out piercing the tax cap. We didn't feel, as Dr. Lynch mentioned, that really that was something the community would be at all in favor of. And it's also, as Dr. Lynch said, we've gotten to a point where we don't feel at this point, in order to bridge this gap, we need to access any positions with the caveat about federal funding. So it really leaves us looking at these last three options, and these are the three that we will take a look at over the next few days leading up to next Wednesday. So jumping into the budgets themselves, our superintendent budget is flat, and our Board of Education budget only shows a slight increase. It's largely due to increases in the cost of actually renting the voting machines and transporting the voting machines here, and also paying for the poll workers themselves. Our curriculum instruction and assessment budget, we're seeing a decrease here of just under 10%. This is largely due to our adoption of a train the trainer methodology, where we pay to send our staff out to be trained in the professional development that we need. Those staff then come back in district and provide the training themselves, so we don't have to either pay to send our staff out or pay to bring other professional developers in. And Dr. Balekis, feel free to jump in and correct me if I say anything incorrect.
Spot on, Mr. Press.
Excellent, thank you. The other decrease here is in charter school tuition. It's really the reduction of one student. Just for those, I think there was a question about charter school tuition. There is a rate that is set by New York State. So if any student from within the Lynbrook School District, if their parents choose to send them to a charter school and they enroll, we send them this tuition. It's the same tuition rate regardless of whatever charter school they go to, because that rate is set by New York State. Okay, excellent. Moving on, PTSSS, Personnel, Transportation, Student Support Services. Here we're seeing, this is a sizable increase. This is almost 36%. So there's a story here that I will try to tell correctly. And again, I will say, Dr. Berman, correct me if I'm wrong. Around this time last year, our main transportation provider came to us and said, we're choosing not to renew your contracts. We have 2 contracts with this provider, one for generally small buses, one for large buses. The effect of coming to us at this point when we're presenting a budget is that we don't have the ability to go back really and change that budget to incorporate any increases from having to rebid a contract at that point. Dr. Berman, who has a very good relationship with our provider, was able to negotiate with them to, if they were going to not renew contracts, choose not to renew only one this year, not both, and then you can not renew the second contract in the following year, which they agreed to, which was a huge help for us. Still resulted in an increased budget for the current year of about $500,000 over what we had budgeted. So what Dr. Berman and I did at that point in the fall, we said, let's get ahead of this. We know they're not going to renew. We did a bid for transportation in the fall, which is very early and not usual for doing this, but we wanted to do so that we would have numbers that we could plug, actual numbers that we could plug into the budget for 25-26. So we did our bid there. The rates came back. They increased, and we knew they would increase. Just a note that the rates that actually were bid by the company were actually still below what our neighboring districts are paying. So we're still actually doing well, even though our costs have increased. Having said that, when the second bid came back, when we plugged those numbers into the budget, at that point we were looking at an increase in transportation budget to budget about $1.8 million, which again, adding to all of the other cost increases that we were seeing, added to our consternation, I'll say. Dr. Berman went back, spoke to the company again, and was able to negotiate a slower increase. They chose not to do increases on one of the contracts for next year, and a lower increase for that second contract. So we were able to, on that second negotiation with Dr. Berman, save about another $200,000 there. So we're still seeing increases, but they're just not as bad as they were when we first got the numbers. And so what we're seeing here, the first 2 bullet points here, increases based on those renegotiated and rebidded contracts. This is not the entirety of transportation. You'll also see transportation in the special education budget and in the athletics budget, and you'll see it to a lesser extent. These increases show up at the building level in terms of field trips. So, good, all good? I did not, okay, excellent. I'm 2 for 2. Okay, the third bullet point here, again, so we had our own challenges with our own contracts. Nassau BOCES handles some of our transportation as well. They have some of their own vehicles, but they also contract out with other providers, and their provider chose not to renew their contract this year. When they bid that out, they came back with increases at Nassau BOCES this year of 27%, and then another 5% next year. Hence, we're seeing a 30% increase in our BOCES transportation. So we got hit with a lot in transportation this one year. And now I'll move on, because that's a large number, and I don't want to look at it. Yes. Dr. Berman she made a yeoman's effort in getting those numbers down. And honestly, and I've spoken with other school districts, and again, the numbers that we're paying now are below what other districts are paying. And those districts are now being told by their providers that those providers are not renewing their contracts, and they're going out to bid. And again, they're already higher than us, and they're looking at 20 to 30% increases. So we're paying more, but we're not doing bad. Finance, operations, and information systems. This is my budget line. Another number I'm not happy looking at. There's an increase there of $353,000. That's almost 12% increase. This is largely due to increases that we're seeing in insurance, as I'm sure a lot of you out there are seeing in your homeowners insurance and your auto insurance. Our rates have been going up at double-digit rates for the last several years. Additionally, our main insurance carrier was unable to provide us with flood insurance any longer this year, so we had to go out and get additional separate flood insurance, and then we added in insurance for our underground storage tanks. So that's contributed fairly significantly. Additionally, every 5 years or so, we have an outside company comes in and appraises our assets. When they came in recently, they told us that our property assessment increased by about 45%. And so that's hitting this line as well. I do have a meeting with them tomorrow to maybe yell at them a little bit and see if we can, maybe I'll bring in Dr. Berman. She seems to do well negotiating people to maybe not increase the rates as much. But I did also reach out to our insurance company to see if they could put some pressure on as well, to see if we can get some savings here. But at the moment, we are looking at a fairly large 43% increase in our insurance. That second line, $13,000 increase in our financial system. We are looking to roll out a timekeeping system so that we can replace all of the paper that we use here to keep track of people's time. And I expected at least a little yay from the administrators in the audience, but I got not even a clap. Okay. I got a couple of smiles. This is good. So that'll go actually a long way to finding efficiencies in our payroll process, and then position control. I won't bore you with the details. Needless to say, I'm kind of excited about that. And I think Dr. Berman is also. Debt and interfund transfers, not much here. We're in the 6th year of 20 years of debt service, and that payment generally remains relatively flat. As a slight variance here. And our interfund transfers to support summer special ed and the food service program is flat as well. And it continues our $5,000 contribution to the food program. Facilities is up about 3%, where we actually kind of able to squeeze a little bit in the utilities area, leaving the rates kind of where they are, but tightening up a little bit on our usage of fuel oil, electric, natural gas, and water. So that's a net decrease there. It's offset by an increase of $68,000 in our asbestos and lead abatement testing code. So we are required to test the water in all of our buildings every several years. We did that a few years ago. We test, there was a limit of 15 parts per million, I believe is the threshold. And so anything that exceeded that, we were required to remediate. That threshold has been lowered now by 2/3. And so we know from the last time we had some of our water outlets that exceeded that limit, but they were below the previous threshold. We didn't have to remediate. Now we're going to have to remediate, so there's going to be an increased cost there. In terms of maintenance codes, this is at the building level. We're increasing those by 10%. To really right-size those codes and to take into account the reality in the marketplace with inflation. And I'm hoping that's not affected by any of these the tariffs that have been put in place, but that remains to be seen. And then additional increases in HVAC maintenance, and then other security supplies and materials and uniforms. Capital projects in the budget, slight increase here of $50,000. We are looking to finally do some renovation on restrooms, the student bathrooms over at West End. Some of them are in very bad need of repair. I'm getting a nod from, yes, okay. Yay, we're getting some responses. People are not, they're still awake. This is good. So we're going to redo 3 of the student bathrooms up there. We're also going to take the opportunity to carve out some additional bathroom space for faculty. It's been severely lacking in that building. So we're going to take this opportunity to increase the amount of space there additionally, especially because now we have this the special ed continuum moving in there. We're going to have additional staff in the building. And then another $150,000 also at West End to help build out the classrooms needed for the continuum of special ed there at West End. On to our school budgets. We're looking here in total elementary and secondary, an increase of about 18%, just around 3% at the elementary schools, due largely to increases in instructional supplies and equipment and office supplies and things of that nature. There's also, we're going to see this across the buildings and athletics as well, contractual increases in activity salaries that are the result of our finalizing of the LTA contract. Here we're also seeing an increase of $10,000 in transportation, again due to the rebidding of contracts. And those increases are offset, at least in part, to a decrease of almost $30,000 in textbooks. That is the result of textbooks being purchased in the 24-25 year that are not needed to be purchased next year. At the secondary schools, the largest increase there is, again, contractual activities salaries, part of the LTA contract, increases of $32,000 in instructional supplies, which is largely due to supplies needed for new science exams at the middle school level. And then again, we're hit with a transportation increase of about $31,000 across all of the secondary buildings. Special education, we're actually seeing a decrease here, just over 1%. We're seeing a large, almost $1 million of decrease in private tuition codes for a number of reasons that are listed here. Excuse me. Sorry, water break. Did you want to jump in?
I do
No?
just want to jump in, because this is an important, because I've been talking so much about the increase in special education costs, it's only fair to know that the other side of the story was we were keeping kids home for 2 good reasons. One is because Lynbrook kids belong in Lynbrook schools. That's the primary reason. The secondary reason is it is more economical to educate them in our own buildings than it is to send them to private tuition codes. So while those increased costs in special education would be mostly due on the salary line, so we still see, increase there. What happens is you start to see a decrease on the other side. So that is, I'm happy to say, as predicted, because at one point you start this process years ago and you kind of, is it really going to work? Like, are we going to really see these tuitions go down? And I think this is the first year where we start to see appreciable change in those tuitions. So that's what I want. That's why I took your water break to throw in a spoke there.
So in this code, we've had a number of students coming back in district. We've had students graduating from private placement, students aging out as well. So, again, seeing decreases like this in special ed usually makes me a little queasy. But we went over this. I went over this with, with Susan, and this is real. We know where all the kids who were budgeted in the current year, we know where they are in this year, and they're just not in here. So that decrease is real. We moved the Northwell Health cost was budgeted in special ed before. We thought it was more appropriate in the guidance and social work code. So that's why you'll see a decrease here of $132,000. Here's another part of that transportation increase, $470,000 due to the rebidding of contracts. We've got a $400,000 plus increase overall in related services. This is across all of our buildings and including our out-of-districts. placements as well. We're seeing the increase is largest actually in the out-of-district placements. There's a lot of students. So this is students at OLP or students that are parentally placed, and we're just seeing a lot of increased needs there. So there's an increase in related services, which actually is offset a bit by the fact that this is showing up more on the salary slide. The only position we are adding this year to the budget is a 1.0 FTE occupational therapist. This will be the third year in a row that we're doing this, and this is offset by a reduction actually in the related services code. So we've been hiring occupational therapists as opposed to bringing them in from outside agencies. And then there's a $106,000 increase in public tuition codes. That's just really due. There's no increase in students there. It's just an increase in the actual tuition rates. Communications and technology, we're up a combined roughly 8%, almost 9% in the IT side and about 3.5% on the instructional tech side. So variance here, 164,000. There's an increase there of 168,000, which is largely due to our sort of the one-to-world, one-to-one device project. We tend to, what we do when we purchase these devices for students and staff is we finance them over a period of years. We typically have 3 of these finance projects going at any one time. And so every year we add one falls off. In this case, we've added a project that runs over $200,000 for about 650 devices. The project that's falling off was about $84,000 for 250 devices from a few years back. So there's a shift there. And then we've also, sorry, I'm looking at the instructional technology line. There's additional device replacement and software products being added to this, to the BOCE's network administration code from another software code. So that's contributing to the increase there. We've got a $51,000 increase in the telephone code due to us having to upgrade our telephones, some of our telephones, and we're also adding additional new internet lines at each, backup internet lines at each of our buildings. And then finally, there's a decrease of $32,000 in district computer repair. That's due to items that we purchased in 24-25 that do not need to be purchased again in 25-26. Athletics and health, up about $130,000. This is that third part of the transportation increase, so $167,000 increase in transportation, which is a large, on a percentage basis, large increase in transportation for athletics. And then we've got contractual increases in coaching salaries and athletic supervision. Those next 2 bullets offset in part by a decrease in supplies and equipment there, and a decrease in our athletic trainer code. This was a position that was contracted in the past. In the current year, we hired an athletic trainer, so we were able to decrease the athletic trainer, the contract services code here. Fine and performing arts, it's a decrease of about 10%. Largely due to there were choral risers that were budgeted in the current year. We purchased them. We don't need to purchase them again next year. So that's showing up as a decrease here. And then a slight increase in transportation, again, due to that rebidding of contracts. Guidance and counseling, this increase is largely because we moved, as I previously mentioned, Northwell Health here from the special ed codes. There were also, this to a smaller degree, we had supplies and printing and postage for guidance at the buildings in this code. This year we decided to move that actually out to the buildings. So that's no longer showing in this code. Special programs, our summer playground, our summer school, and adult ed. This is an increase of about 16%. This is largely due to an increase as a result of the academic program that we're looking to add into the summer as well. So, and then smaller increases in rates for counselors and administrators of the summer programs and the summer school and things like that. All right. Salaries and benefits. Salaries, we're looking at an increase of about 2%. Again, this would have been much larger in the absence of the retirement incentive. And the salaries here do include that 1.0 FTE occupational therapists that I previously mentioned. These increases, again, since we're really only adding the one new position, these increases are largely due to contractual requirements. In our benefits code, a lot of increase here. The health insurance is increasing because we're building in an estimated 10% increase in the premium. That's generally what we've been seeing when they do increase rates. They held rates fairly steady this year for calendar year 2025. My personal opinion is that they should not have done that, because the last time they did that, we got hit with a 15% increase the next year. I'd rather that they smooth that out, but I don't make those calls. We've also seen an actual increase in the number of people participating in our insurance program. Okay. That's all I'll say there. Social Security is going up just as a result of salaries. We have our two pension lines, ERS and TRS. ERS is for our non-instructional staff. TRS is for our instructional staff. Both rates that we're required to contribute are mandated to us by the state. So we don't have control over it. They set the rates. The ERS rate has been going up. This is now the second fairly, what I would consider, significant increase in a row. Last year, the rates went up. The rate went up so much last year that it actually allowed us to have an exclusion in the tax cap calculation. That does not happen a lot, but that's just a statement of how much it went up. So this year it went up from 15.2% to 16.5%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's actually an 8.6% increase. That's the effect of that is 8%, 8.6%, regardless of whether the salaries increase or not. So we're looking at a total increase there of about 13% in ERS. The TRS rate, on the other hand, has actually decreased. So it went down from 10.11% to about 9.6%, which is effectively a 5% decrease. So when you offset it with the increase in salaries that we're seeing, the net decrease there is only about 4%. So this is our summary of all the slides we presented so far, showing our total budget, an increase of almost $3.9 million. It's a 3.65% budget-to-budget increase. So how do we pay for it? Several ways. This is we're looking at our local revenue projection. Not a lot has changed here. I did increase the summer playground revenue given the increase in programs. Actually, this is the point. I should have taken this point earlier to talk about. So summer playground, it's a community-based program. It should operate at break even. It has not been operating at break even. And so we are increasing the rates to help that happen for this summer. So the rate for in-district students for the summer 2025 will be $300. And the rate for non-district resident will be $330. We're maintaining that $30 difference between the in-district and out-of-district students.
And I just feel like jumping in there, just
Sure.
I did some quick math, just so you know that even with the increase, that is now $3.50 an hour that people will be paying for. So I still say it's a pretty darn good deal.
Very good bargain. Our pilot payments in lieu of taxes, gone up about $200,000 there. Other lines have kind of remained the same, with a slight increase in use of reserves, which we'll talk about on the next slide in more detail. But our local revenue projection is about $8.7 million. In terms of use of reserves, no change. Actually, no, I apologize. The ERS reserve is increasing from $1.5 million to $1.7 million, our use of that reserve. That's to offset the budgeted $1.7 million in ERS expense. All the other use of reserve lines here have remained unchanged year to year. In terms of the ending balance, you see the asterisk on the employee benefits. This is that employee benefits accrued liability reserve that Dr. Lynch had mentioned earlier. The balance there represents, it includes an estimate of what we're thinking we're going to pay out as a result of the retirement incentive. We don't have those final numbers yet, and really we won't. It's based on unused sick days, and we still have the rest of the year for people who are retiring to use their sick days. State aid revenue projections, we did in the executive budget see an increase of just over $1 million in foundation aid. I'd like more, but you know what? I'll take $1 million. The 7% increase there. These numbers that we're showing are largely from the executive budget run. So our transportation aid here has decreased a little bit. I was nerding out a little bit earlier today on aid ratios. Because some of the aid that we receive, they're called expense-based aids. So for transportation, for example, we spend money on transportation, we get reimbursed the following year based on what we spent. But part of the way they calculate what we get paid is the aid ratio. And those ratios will change on a year-to-year basis. What's happened, and this is not just the Lynbrook thing, we had a conversation with colleagues back in February. Someone did an analysis, and most of the districts in Nassau County, this was a group of Nassau County business officials, most of them saw their aid ratios decrease. And that's an effect of, there's a comparison of wealth in Nassau County districts as compared to the wealth of an average for the whole state. And so while our wealth is increasing, it's increasing at a larger rate than the rest of the state. For example, in what I was looking at earlier today, the wealth measure that I was looking at went up for us about 17%, when it's compared to the statewide average that went up 11%. So we start to continually look more and more wealthy, and that pushes down our aid ratios. So that's the extent of how much I will nerd out in front of this group. But anyone wants to come and talk aid ratios with me, just make an appointment. I'll be happy to talk to you. The other increase here, building aid, has increased. That is a function of us closing out some of the capital projects that had taken place throughout the district. So we're seeing an increase there. And so our total budgeted general fund state aid is just about $21 million. I broke out the UPK below the line here. The state, when they do their runs, include that $842,000 in the mix. But that money is handled separately. It is not used to support the general fund budget. That only goes to our special aid fund, which we call our F fund. And basically that money comes in, it goes right back out for us to Tiny Tykes and to JCC for the UPK program that they run on our behalf. In terms of the tax cap, we'll just kind of go through this fairly quickly. This is the calculation over these next two slides. We start with the last year's levy, in this case 24-25. We build, there's two main factors in here. These are factors that are given to us. The tax-based growth factor is given to us by the state, and that's a measurement of the growth in the tax base, basically. Typically, that's through construction. It also goes up when you have pilot payments in lieu of taxes, when those agreements end and those properties go back on the tax roll, which is the case here. All right, in terms of our pilots, we add back in the pilots that we are receiving in the current school year. We back out these exemptions, basically capital work that we have done that is not offset by building aid, and we get to our adjusted prior year levy. That's at the point after that where we get the adjusted prior year levy, where that CPI factor comes in. So the 2% that you see on the cover of Newsday, when they mislead everyone into thinking that, oh, your tax cap is 2%. Very rarely have I actually seen a 2% tax cap, but this is where that factor is plugged into the equation. Then we back out our estimated pilots, and we get to our tax levy limit before exclusions. And I see people still awake in the audience. This is good. No questions so far? All good? Okay. All right. So we take this, this adjusted levy, And then we add in our debt service, our capital projects in the budget, the BOCES capital exclusion, which is essentially the assessment from BOCES of their capital work that they assess on us. And so that's an exclusion here. I left the ERS exclusion line in there just to show it was zero this year. It was a little less than 10,000 last year. We take out our building aid, and that gets us to our allowable levy limit, which is just under $79 million, which represents a $2.2 million budget-to-budget increase in the tax levy, or 2.93%. So typically, this slide kind of balances out, but I have included our gap in here as well. We take our proposed expenditure budget, we line up all of our revenue. In this case, our revenue is $31.1 million. And then we would typically add our estimated tax levy, and that would equate the revenue and expenses. In this case, those two don't balance, so we're showing that budget gap, which, again, hopefully by next Wednesday, we will have eliminated and present with a balanced budget. So Proposition 1 is the school district budget. That's what will show up when voters go to the polls. Proposition 2 is our use of technology reserve. In this case, we are asking the community to approve the use of $400,000 from that reserve, $175,000 on wiring, replacing the wiring, updating the wiring at the kindergarten center and on the admin side of that building at Atlantic Avenue. And then $225,000 for device replacements. This is primarily this year we're looking to replace the touch screens, the smart boards at the middle schools. And Stephanie, just nod or go like this if I'm wrong. The boards there are operating on Windows 10. Is that correct? No, not all of them? Okay, we're just replacing the boards. If you have questions, we could you get into more detail. There's about 46 boards that we're looking to replace with touchscreens at the middle schools. That part I got correct. Excellent. Additionally, there's replacement. We built in about 100 laptops into that number as well. So again, this is use of funding from the reserve. This has absolutely no effect on the tax levy or the budget whatsoever. This is just us asking the community to pull money essentially out of a savings account that we have whose sole purpose is for the purchase of technology equipment. Similarly, Proposition 3 will be the use of facilities reserve. The high school here on the old portion of the building is past its useful life. Again, Mr. Shea, to just go like this if I'm wrong. The roof. Yes. The roof itself, the building is fine. The roof is past its useful life. And so it is in desperate need of being replaced. The cost of that is about $2.7 million. Additionally, we're looking to renovate a science classroom at North Middle School. Their third science classroom up there is way too small. It does not allow for the proper education of the students. The students can't do all of the experiments that they are required to do. There's a lot of movement back and forth of classes so that when they're doing these assignments and these experiments, they're going into a classroom that has the equipment and that class is being disrupted. So we're just looking to build out and renovate a science classroom so that they have 3 functional science classrooms at North Middle School. That's a $500,000 for a total of $3.2 million. That will leave us with reserve balances in our capital reserves of just over $4 million after that use. Again, similar to the tech reserve, this has absolutely no effect on the budget or the tax levy. This is just us pulling money out of the capital reserve that has been set up for strictly for that purpose. Proposition 4, we're going to ask the community to reauthorize one of our capital reserves, the Continuous Facilities Improvement Capital Reserve. That reserve was established in June of 2020 for a period of 5 years, so that's coming up this June. That reserve was originally established with a capitalization threshold of $12 million. We're just asking for an extension of 3 years up to a maximum capitalization of $18 million with annual funding thresholds of $2 million, which is in keeping with the annual funding thresholds in the original proposition. Just to be clear, we're not looking to accumulate $18 million in this reserve, and even the $12 million, we're not even close to that. As I mentioned, right now there's about $6 million in this reserve. So we fund it, and then we spend the money out of it. So, but the way these are set up, we have to set a maximum amount of money that we can put into the reserve. So we're asking the community to reauthorize this reserve. Again, no effect on the tax cap, no effect on the budget at all. So that's really it on the budget. Just reminders, the budget adoption meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday, March 12th. Our required budget hearing, May 7th. That is the last time we will present the budget to the public. The last day to register to vote, May 14th, and the budget vote, Tuesday, May 20th. Polls open at 7 a.m., they close at 9 p.m., and voting is at either North or South Middle School or the high school, depending on where you live. And with that, I'll just ask if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start out. I want to commend Dr. Berman, Dr. Balekis, Mr. Press, and Dr. Lynch, who, even though he doesn't admit it, is secretly a budget official at heart because he loves the finance side of things. This is actually, I know we see some, increases in this budget, about a $3 million increase from year to year. That's actually pretty incredible when you look at what we're facing, right? The overwhelming bulk of it, the largest category, is an increase in transportation costs. That's something completely beyond our control. And actually, in the other direction, Dr. Berman took out a big sting from that by getting that reduced in this coming year. And that was a lot of work on her part and on the entire administrative team's part. Even with that, we're still looking at $800,000 or $900,000 just from that area. We have some, contractual increases. That's the other big one. And insurance. Insurance premiums are up massively. I was at the BOCES meeting because I'm the BOCES rep for the board. Every single district is looking at least as much on those increases, right? Everyone's talking about the insurance up. BOCES insurance is up. Transport costs are up everywhere, and obviously salaries and benefits go up every year. I think this is actually incredible work on the administrative team's part just to get to these numbers and really constrain costs in what we all know is a really tough year. And a lot of that is the result of you guys seeing this coming 18 months ago and giving us a heads up and doing the work for this year to say, we know it's coming, let's make sure everything else is constrained so we don't have to go to the community and pierce the tax cap, and we don't have to lay off teachers, and we don't have to really, one of the overwhelming themes is social, emotional, protect that area. We also protected the classroom. There's nothing that's been cut or reduced in this budget or held in check that touches the students in the classroom. So I just want to commend you guys. I think it's actually incredible that you were able to get us within a rounding error of a balanced budget, given what we're facing everywhere else, from the state and everywhere else.
I just have a couple of quick questions. Dr. Berman, you were able to, defer some of these transportation increases till next year. Do we have any idea what that amount would be next year approximately?
So one of the decreases that they gave to us was a couple of percents off of one of the set of contracts.
Okay.
So next year, I would anticipate that we would just be going up CPI.
Okay, great. And if I read the bullets correctly, of the 870,000 approximately an increase, 600,000 of that is for private school / BOCES?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's a good chunk of the increase that's coming from the private schools.
Correct.
Okay, just checking. And just to echo what Mr. Lynch said, I would also like to congratulate you guys. 2 months ago when you brought this to our attention, the deficit was significantly larger than what we're looking at right now. And yeah, and it's remarkable the amount of work you guys put into this. And we see it. I don't know if the community sees it, but we know how much work you put into this, and we also know how you were able to maneuver these funds and cut without actually hurting these kids at all. There are so few direct cuts. There are other schools that are closing buildings and laying off, a fair amount of teachers, and that, could be considered possibly lazy or just not creative. You guys have definitely put the work in and got creative, and it's going to show with the amount of stuff that these students still have at their disposal because of your creativity. So it's a great job.
And I'll echo what they said. Thank you. Particularly as the new board member, I plague our administration team with questions and taking them up on their offers for meetings. So I very much appreciate really your transparency and your willingness to always meet. So thank you. I have a few questions, Dr. Berman, could you just confirm for me, please, when we talk about our major transportation provider, that is one company, correct?
Correct.
That has
Independent.
routinely given us a break and kept us to CPI and just really done this district a service, if I'm understanding all the numbers and the history correctly.
You're absolutely correct. Independent has been a part of this district for a number of years.
Yeah, so thank you to Independent if you are watching. That was my first question. The next few are for Mr. Press. So, follow my notes here. In the central projects budget, so I just wanted to comment on the renovations for the bathrooms and then the classroom space at West End. Having done the building tour, I am so appreciative that that's being addressed. They need to be done. It's not even questionable. I just wanted to say that if anyone's been in those bathrooms, this is a much-needed project. With regard to the special education slide that you shared with us, I had a question regarding the figures. Do the figures you presented, so this was slide 13? Yep.
There it is.
Do those figures include the 611 and 619 grants that we get for our elementary programs in special education?
They do not. Those special ed grants that you mentioned, the 611, 619, those are part of the IDEA grants that Dr. Lynch had mentioned earlier. Those, similar to the UPK funding that I mentioned, go through the special aid fund.
So does that all go into the F fund and it's separate from general?
Yes.
So these figures here that you presented, that's just the cost to the district. That's not the overall cost
That
for
is correct.
educating our students?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And another comment there, if I may. So I was at North Middle School last Friday for the science fair in one of our special classes, and just bravo. Having these kids here doing great work is unreal, absolutely unreal. Okay, that was my question there. Guidance and counseling, where we moved the Northwell expense, just that we moved it from guidance to guidance from special education. How do we go about ensuring kind of the oversight of the Northwell partnership, or how well it's working?
That's a great question. So we have a bunch of administrators in the, and we always say we're never going to hit one of the administrators unless it's a question we can't answer. So we're going to put our rookie up there so I'm going to ask Mrs. Boyce if she could just address that topic. So sorry about that, but this will go a long way to Rookie of the Year, I think. This will.
Of course. Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. Again, as the rookie of the administrative team, I am the liaison for the Northwell Partnership through our Guidance and Social Work Department. And one of the things that we are working on is better communication with Northwell. As you guys know, this partnership is fairly new, a couple of months, as old as I am here. The Northwell Partnership is here. And one of the things that I've been able to do is work closely with our liaison through the Northwell Partnership, Dr. Vera, who is in charge of all the processes that we do with crisis crisis intervention. Couple of things that we have set in place after our first initial meeting. One of the things that we do is every couple of months, we do a check-in to see where we are in terms of the services that they provide. We are doing regular monitoring and accountability, which basically is checking in to make sure the response time is accurate. There's no bottlenecking, there's no concerns where students and families are waiting long periods of time for service. Another way that we're implementing some better measures to ensure that our students and families are being serviced is through clear communication. Our direct contact within each building is our social workers, along with the school principals. And once a referral is made, there's direct contact with the Northwell team directly after the referral has been submitted. Once the referral has been submitted and a point of contact has been made, then there's follow-up in terms of what resources, what services that family has been provided. There has been some hiccups in terms of connection to care. They've admitted to us that since we've been signed on with them, they've picked up additional 20, 30 more schools. So they're very, very busy. But their response to that is they've done a lot more hiring. Since then, we haven't seen much lacking in terms of communication and students getting the services that they need once we put in the referrals. The feedback is from families, schools, administrators has been key for us. Getting the feedback from these key stakeholders has helped us enhance our overall effectiveness through the process. The communication from me to the community in terms of through Parent Square and things like that to share some of the amazing things that Northwell has offered does keep the district as well as the community aware of everything that Northwell has to offer. We do agree that the Northwell partnership is fairly new, so there has been some hiccups in the road, but our challenge is to service students and families to the fullest extent.
Thank you so
You're welcome.
much. And I know that was thrown at you, so
It's
I
okay.
really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, I think I only have two more. Sorry. I'm really not sorry. On slide 21. So this is the local revenue projection. First question is on summer playground.
Yes.
And I love summer playground. My own children enjoyed it very much. Can you clarify whether or not, is it a net zero? Is there some cost to the district? I know it comes up on the expense side and the revenue side, and I didn't flip fast enough to.
Of course, it is illegal for the district to fund a community-based program, but it hasn't been net zero in a very long time. So the district has been subsidizing it for a number of years, and actually, even with an increase, we'll continue to be subsidizing it. So.
Right. Okay. Next is on the interest. Same slide. Could you speak to how, and I know we had spoken about this at our meeting, but I thought it would be fun for Mr. Press to answer it in public. Could you speak to how aggressive you are with kind of capitalizing on interest possibilities or interest potential for those, revenue-bearing funds that we have?
Sure. We haven't, honestly, we've been very fortunate in that we haven't had to be overly aggressive in that area. We have a fairly sizable amount of our funds in NICLAS, which is an organization that works with municipalities, and we've had a number of our funds there earning interest rates in excess of 5%. Leading up to this year. The rates there tend to track in the same direction as the rates set at the Federal Reserve. So Federal Reserve has been reducing rates, so the rates we've been receiving have gone down. They are still in the mid-4s, 4%, but knowing that, and I keep a very close eye on at least what people are talking about. I watch the Fed, I watch their moves, and then I read the news about what the plans are. When the rates came down, we moved additional funding into NICLAS. So we had basically the reserve money which we don't use very often. We use it when the community approves the use, but we use little bits at a time. So initially, it was largely reserve funds that were there, but we've started to move a little bit more of the operating funds there and then pull them out when we need them. So there are periods throughout the year where we get funds in terms of like tax revenue, state aid revenue. It's not a steady flow, it kind of peaks, and we get peaks and valleys. So we'll move money in, we'll move money out to take advantage and try to maximize interest. So just as a point there, our interest income from 23-24, we're tracking to earn about the same amount this year, even though the rates have come down almost a full %. Sure.
I also want to echo and say thank you to Mr. Press, to all the administration, all the building administrators, and the LTA for working during this really difficult budget season, for really coming up with a fiscally responsible budget for us. I do have a few questions. When we're talking about the OTs, are there any contracted out at this time, or are they all?
I think we're still contracting out
Yes,
OTs.
Mrs. Saban, we do have a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hope to reduce it, but there'll always be need for contracted OT.
Okay, and then in the budget, I saw, I don't know which page, $5,000 towards food program. If in the budget, the governor's budget right now, she has for fully funded meals, would that eliminate that budget line?
No.
Oh.
No, we would still, I don't know what her plan would be, but I don't know that it would cover the cost of the meals that we're serving to students.
Okay. And then more of a concern than a question, just looking at how we're using reserves for like replacing the roof and renovating rooms. And when we talk about the aid that we get from the state and everything, I just think that this is something they're not taking into account. All of these buildings, not just in Lynbrook, but throughout the state, are old and need repair, and they're not giving enough money to, balance our budgets in addition to keeping our facilities pristine and safe for the students to learn in an effective environment. So it's just, really a concern. Thank you. Any more questions?
I have two more, if I may. So to go to Leslie's comment, and thank you for bringing that up on the food, because I wrote it and then forgot it. With regard to our use of reserves, it's actually a double question. First is, we always see those articles in Newsday and social media, what have you, about districts getting in trouble for their reserves. We're never on that list, thanks to you all. But can you speak to just how we fall into what's allowable versus what gets us into that kind of gray zone?
It's a very good question, and it's interesting because there are really not any guidelines on what is and is not appropriate. We do have a reserve plan, and in that reserve plan, we spell out what it is that we are looking to keep in reserves. But at when the state comes down, when the comptroller comes down and audits districts and says you've got too much in reserves, actually, typically what they're talking about initially, what you'll see is people have too much unassigned fund balance. That's what's supposed to be 4%, the sort of rainy day fund. There are a number of districts that exceed that. We do not. That's that's an easy area for the state to come down because there is a law that says that limit is 4%. If you exceed that, they will cite you. Outside of that, the other reserves that we have, there's really not any firm guidelines on that. I've asked that question of auditors in the past, and they were like, well, there's kind of generally accepted guidelines, but there's nothing firm on that. So I think the funding levels here, and I mean, Dr. Lynch has a lot more of a history here, are very reasonable. In a prior district, I think we skirted the line of what was considered reasonable and not reasonable, but, and the levels here are much lower than that. So I think we're well below the point where the comptroller would come in and say, you have too much in reserves.
And I think the other key is what you mentioned with transparency, that, you know, if we are transparent with the community, that's to whom we're accountable. You know, so if Mr. Belmont were here right now, he would go on a rant regarding this, because, you know, there are high restrictions as to why we can use that money and what we can use that money for. It's our money. You know, you've given it to us over the course of all these years, and, you know, when we have fund balance, we put it into those reserves, but that's exactly what it's for. So we have strived to be as transparent, certainly with the board, but with the community every single time. That slide up there, here's what we're using, here's what's left. Here's what we're using, here's what left. Here's how we accumulate it. And yes, the reserves plan is great reading. If it's on the website at any time, yep.
And I just want to add on top of that, because, you know, we talk about, and the comptroller comes down and you see the stories in Newsday about reserves and fund balance. And then, you know, up in Albany, they have billions of dollars in reserves, much more than 4%. But we're held to 4%, and we've done it, and we've been able to do that successfully.
I just have one question. If you go to slide 8, one of the pretty large ticket items was a $293,000 increase in insurance premiums. And as I understood it, there was two components to that increase. One was the rate that's going up, and the other is that they're reassessing our district property and they're using a higher value for that property, right?
Yes.
So, you know, for those out in TV land, when you calculate insurance premiums, they charge a rate per thousand or a rate per million on the value of your property. If your home is worth $800,000 and versus $600,000, your premiums are higher on the $800,000 home, even if the rate is the same. You can't do anything to touch the rate. That's going to be set by the insurance company. But is there a process in place under our policy to go back and challenge the TIV, the total insured value of the properties?
That was, so I met with the regional director for NYSER, which is our insurance company, a couple of weeks back. And we went through all of the different coverages that we have. And I said, I mean, the increase there, I said, I need someone to explain that to me, because we, you know, Dr. Lynch had told me, I went to him and I said, oh my gosh, maybe the last time they came in was before we did the extension on the high school. And he said, no, they've been in since then. So we have a call tomorrow with the company that did the appraisal, and I'm going to ask them many questions about what their methodology is,
Okay.
because, you know, it's not an area that I'm expert in, but I do plan to follow up that conversation with a call with the insurance company again to say, you know, I need their help in understanding whether or not those appraised values are correct.
And I just, because this was in our transition period, so that I just don't buy it. And the reason I don't buy it is because we built 48,000 square feet behind me here, and we bought all sorts of casing, and we bought all sorts of equipment. We renovated all our science labs back there, and purposefully, we said, can you come in and evaluate? We paid for it. Normally, we get this from our carrier for free. We paid for it that year because I wanted to make sure it was accurate. So if it were to hit, it should have hit 2 years ago. I don't know why we would have a delayed response for a 48,000 square foot addition. Why is that not hitting the books until that point?
Did they provide a breakdown as to where the increase in values came from? Meaning, you know, the high school building is now appraised at $2 million more. Did they give a breakdown?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
it's done. It was done by building, and then even in some of the buildings, like here, there's that storage building out back. They have, you know, appraised value on that as well.
Okay. Yeah, because a lot of insurance policies, and I do this as one of my areas of my practice is insurance. There is a mechanism under the policy to go and actually challenge it, where the insurance company has their appraiser, we put our own appraiser, and then there's a hearing before a neutral appraiser. Every policy is different, and I will look at the district's policy actually now that this has come up.
Okay.
We'll chat after about getting the policy, but many policies do have a mechanism to go back and challenge it, and it's a straightforward challenge. If we can do that, that may bring down some of that value right there.
Yeah, one thing that we're very kind of cautious about is, like, we get their evaluation from so it's CBIZ, it's the famous CBIZ, that comes in, and they pay for that. So they're paying the person that's evaluating
Which I did bring up with,
It's cause for a little thinking.
Right, it's no different than any appraisal dispute. With the side that thinks it's worth more has their appraiser, and coincidentally, that guy comes in with a much higher value, and the side that says it's worth less has an appraiser that says less. So, right, what you're saying is a practical reality. It's not uncommon, so. But that's an area, it seems, that may be rife for a challenge on a discrete line item that's a big-ticket item.
thank you.
Two more, and I promise they're quick.
You said two more before.
Oh, I'm sorry. Going to what Leslie had said earlier regarding the aid. So on slide 23, our projected state aid revenue is nearly $22 million. But that's projected, correct? We're not guaranteed.
No, no. So some of these numbers, that's a very good question, actually. Some of these numbers are based on, again, I mentioned previously they're expense-based aids. So these numbers are based on what we had put into our budget. So there's a financial form that we file at the beginning of September every year. And on that form, we put in, what were our expenses for the prior year, and then we put in what are our budgeted expenses for the coming year. So the last one we filed in September had our budgeted expenses for 24-25. These aid numbers are based on what we put in as the budgeted numbers. If we don't spend as much as we budgeted in some of these areas, transportation, for example, or BOCES, we will not receive as much aid as is projected here. So those numbers can change. They could also change between now and when the state finalizes their budget. Yeah.
And very last question. Proposition 3 and Proposition 4.
Yes.
Are those referencing the same reserve funds or different?
Oops, I went too far. So they're both referencing the same reserve. We're pulling the funds out of this particular reserve, the Continuous Facilities Improvement Reserve, and then we're asking to reauthorize that same reserve.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No more questions? Okay, and I just wanted to say while we're on this topic about the aid, I happen to have been in Albany today, and our senator and assembly member recognized from touring our schools, we talked about the need for these things that are not, accounted for the aid. At this time, I would invite the public to come up for public comment related to the budget, but since there's an overwhelming response of the public here, we will skip right over that. Our next regular meeting will be March 12th at 7:30 p.m., and I need a motion. Okay.
Yeah, just while we're referencing the audience, so I do want to thank the administrative team, because when you're in another district, sometimes you find out that people are protecting their kingdoms. And when we came to them and they said, folks, we need you to produce like $1 million worth of cuts, they just came and they issued $1 million worth of cuts, So we have very serious conversations, wants and needs. And everyone wants their wants. That's what makes them wants. But the fact that they were able to say, okay, is this a want or a need, and kind of really take a look at that. And we didn't have to cajole them. We didn't have to trick them. We didn't have to bribe them. They saw on our faces that this was just real. And so I thank them very much for all the work that they put in. So great job.
Thank you. I need a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second. Mrs. Kelly, Ms. Aragona. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.